Welcome to the Equality, Diversity and Human Rights module. Care is one of the most directly human jobs in the country. The people you support are not just service users. They're individuals with identities, histories, beliefs, preferences and rights. They experience care through who they are, not separately from it. This session focuses on delivering care that respects identity. It covers what discrimination looks like, both obvious and subtle, the law that protects against it, and the practical reality of inclusive practice in a care home. Two core principles guide this work. First, equality is not treating everyone the same. It means meeting people's different needs so they can achieve equal outcomes. The wheelchair user and the able-bodied resident both need access to the dining room, but in different ways. Treating them identically would exclude one entirely. Second, dignity is non-negotiable. Every resident, every shift, every interaction. This session aligns with the Equality Act 2010, the Human Rights Act 1998, the Freedom Principles used across UK health and social care, and CQC fundamental standards. The Care Inspectorate's Scottish Health and Social Care Standards provide equivalent protections. 5 learning outcomes today. 1. Understanding equality and diversity. These terms are often mixed up but mean different things. Equality is about equal rights and outcomes. Diversity is about recognizing and valuing difference, cultural, religious, sexual, neurological, physical. Both matter and reinforce each other. 2. The Equality Act 2010. The UK's key equality law. It sets out the 9 protected characteristics and defines 4 types of discrimination: direct, indirect, harassment and victimization. We will explore each. 3. The Human Rights Act 1998 and the Freedom Principles. Fairness, respect, equality, dignity and autonomy. The framework used in health and social care to apply human rights in day-to-day practice. 4. Inclusive practice in care. The specific considerations for residents from minority ethnic backgrounds, LGBTQ+ residents, people of different faiths and residents with disabilities, and the practical steps you can take. 5. Responding to discrimination. Whether it comes from colleagues, residents or visitors, your duty is not only to avoid causing harm but to challenge it when you see it. We will look at how to do this safely and effectively. Why does equality matter in care? 3 reasons. 1. It is the law. The Equality Act 2010 prohibits discrimination on any protected characteristic. The Human Rights Act 1998 guarantees rights to dignity, family life and freedom from inhuman treatment. The public sector equality duty requires many providers to eliminate discrimination, advance equality and foster good relations. Breaches can lead to enforcement action, claims and personal liability. 2. It is the right thing to do. Care should respect identity, not erase it. No resident should have to hide their sexuality, remove religious dress, or be served food that violates their beliefs. Discrimination causes real harm. Our residents come from every community, our workforce is equally diverse. How we treat each other models what we expect in our home. 3. It improves care quality. Person-centered, identity-aware care is more effective and better received. Inclusive teams deliver better outcomes. CQC and the Care Inspectorate inspect for inclusive practice, and ratings reflect it. Trust grows when people feel safe and respected. Equality is not a separate task. It runs through everything. When we get this right, the rest of care becomes easier. The Equality Act 2010 is the foundation of UK equality law. It replaced earlier laws, including the Race Relations Act, Sex Discrimination Act and Disability Discrimination Act, with one unified framework that applies to everyone in the UK. What the Act does: it consolidates previous equality legislation, creates the 9 protected characteristics, defines 4 types of unlawful discrimination: direct, indirect, harassment and victimization, places duties on employers and service providers, and permits positive action to support underrepresented groups. How it applies in care. We cannot discriminate in admissions or in the delivery of care. All residents must receive the same standard of care, adapted to their individual needs. We must make reasonable adjustments for disabled residents and staff. Our duties apply both as employers and as service providers. The Equality Act applies even where sector-specific standards, CQC or Care Inspectorate, are silent. It sits above all of them. How it is enforced. Staff cases go to employment tribunals. Resident and service user cases go through the courts or the Equality and Human Rights Commission. Compensation for financial loss is capped, but compensation for injury to feelings is uncapped, and serious cases can attract criminal liability. You may never be the one defending a claim, but the way you treat residents and colleagues every day shapes whether claims arise at all. Get this right and we stay far away from courtrooms. The 9 protected characteristics. These are the categories on which discrimination is unlawful. Memorize them. 1. Age. People of all ages are protected. In care, this matters because age discrimination cuts both ways against older residents, assuming they cannot make decisions, or do not deserve the same medical care, and against younger residents in care homes who often have very different needs. 2. Disability. Defined as a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on the ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. This covers physical disability, sensory impairment, learning disability, autism, mental illness, dementia, long-term physical health conditions like cancer or HIV. 3. Gender reassignment. Trans and non-binary people are protected. The protection covers people at any stage of transition, including those who have not undergone medical intervention. The law is clear that misgendering, refusing to use a person's chosen name, or treating less favorably because of trans status is unlawful discrimination. 4. Marriage and civil partnership. Married people and civil partners are protected against discrimination on grounds of their married status. This is rarely an issue in care, but it exists. 5. Pregnancy and maternity. Pregnant women, women on maternity leave, and women breastfeeding are protected. More relevant for staff than residents, but still applies. 6. Race. Including color, nationality, ethnic origin, national origin. Race discrimination remains widespread in UK society and care is not exempt. 7. Religion or belief. Including all religions, all denominations within religions, and philosophical beliefs that are sincerely held and meet certain criteria. Atheism is a protected belief. Veganism in some forms has been recognized. 8. Sex. Both men and women are protected against sex discrimination. The law also protects people who do not conform to gender stereotypes. 9. Sexual orientation. Lesbian, gay, bisexual people are explicitly protected. Heterosexual people are equally protected against discrimination on the basis of being heterosexual, but in practice the protection more often applies to LGBT people. 4 types of unlawful discrimination. Each works differently and you should recognize all 4 in practice. Direct discrimination. Treating someone less favorably because of a protected characteristic. Refusing care to a Muslim resident, mocking a gay resident, or paying a black staff member less for the same work. It is almost always unlawful, with only narrow exceptions, for example, age-based rules where age is genuinely relevant. Indirect discrimination. A rule or policy that appears neutral but disadvantages people with a particular protected characteristic. A no head coverings rule would disproportionately affect Sikh men, Muslim women and Jewish men. Indirect discrimination is only lawful if it is objectively justified as a proportionate way of achieving a legitimate aim, and the bar is high. Harassment. Unwanted conduct linked to a protected characteristic that creates an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating or offensive environment. Racial slurs, sexual comments, or remarks about disability all qualify. It was only a joke is not a defense. The impact on the recipient is what matters. Victimization. Treating someone badly because they made or supported a discrimination complaint. A staff member who raises concerns about racism and is then given the worst shifts or excluded from training is being victimized. Protection applies even if the original complaint is not ultimately upheld, and it covers informal challenges as well as formal grievances. In a care home, you may see all 4. Recognize them, report them, document them. Reasonable adjustments apply specifically to disability. The Equality Act creates a positive duty, not just to avoid discrimination, but to remove barriers for disabled people. What it means: providers must change physical, procedural or informational barriers where reasonable. What counts as reasonable depends on cost, practicality, the size of the organization and the impact on the person if the adjustment is not made. Examples for residents: hearing loops in communal areas. Easy-read information for people with learning disabilities. Communication aids for residents who cannot speak. Dietary and equipment adaptations. Adjusted routines for sensory or anxiety needs, for example, a resident with autism who cannot tolerate noisy spaces. Examples for staff. Modified shifts, adjusted duties, specialist equipment, larger screens, dictation software, and reasonable handling of medical appointments. The duty applies to you as an employee as well as to residents. The key point: reasonable adjustments are a legal requirement, not a favor. If you see a barrier that an adjustment could remove, for a resident, for yourself or for a colleague, raise it. The Human Rights Act 1998 incorporates the European Convention on Human Rights into UK law. It binds all public bodies and in many cases bodies performing public functions, including some care providers, to act compatibly with the Convention rights. 6 articles particularly relevant in residential care. Article 2, the right to life. The state has a duty to protect life. Relevant in palliative care and DNA-CPR decisions to withdraw or withhold treatment must respect the right to life while not extending dying inappropriately. Cases have been brought where families argued treatment was withdrawn unlawfully. Article 3, freedom from torture and from inhuman or degrading treatment. The bar for breach is high but real. Severe neglect of an older person can constitute inhuman or degrading treatment. Cases in residential care have established this. Refusing toileting until a resident has soiled themselves. Leaving them in soiled clothes for hours. Restraining without justification all can engage Article 3. Article 5, the right to liberty. Lawful detention only on specified grounds and with proper procedures. In care, this means a deprivation of liberty must be authorized through DOLS or, when implemented, LPS. We covered this in the MCA module. Article 8, the right to private and family life. Includes the right to develop relationships, including intimate ones. Residents have the right to a private life, including a sex life with a partner where they have capacity to consent. Includes the right to family contact where families want to visit and the resident wants them, we facilitate. Includes autonomy in personal decisions. Article 9, freedom of religion and belief. Includes worship, observance, dietary practice. We must facilitate the resident's religious practice unless there is a strong justification not to. Article 14, freedom from discrimination in the enjoyment of the other convention rights. So a discriminatory deprivation of liberty engages both Article 5 and Article 14. You do not need to memorize every article. You need to recognize that these rights apply to every resident, every shift. Reasonable adjustments apply only to disability. The Equality Act creates a positive duty to remove barriers, not just avoid discrimination. What this means: providers must change physical, procedural or informational barriers where it is reasonable to do so. What counts as reasonable depends on cost, practicality, the size of the organization and the impact on the person if the adjustment is not made. Examples for residents: hearing loops, easy-read information, communication aids, dietary or equipment adaptations, and adjusted routines for sensory or anxiety needs. Examples for staff: modified shifts, adjusted duties, specialist equipment, larger screens, dictation software and reasonable handling of medical appointments. The core message: reasonable adjustments are a legal duty. If you see a barrier that an adjustment could remove, for a resident, yourself or a colleague, raise it. LGBTQ+ residents in care. Around 5 to 7% of UK adults identify as lesbian, gay or bisexual, and around 0.5 to 1% as trans. In a 40-resident home, 2 or 3 are likely LGBTQ+, though many older people may not be out, having lived through periods when being open was unsafe or illegal. Context for older LGBTQ+ residents. Many lived through criminalization, severe stigma and the AIDS crisis. Some built their lives around secrecy and fear, going back into the closet, in care. Lifelong discrimination contributes to higher rates of mental ill health, smoking, alcohol use and social isolation. Practical inclusion. Avoid assumptions. Don't ask a man, "Is your wife visiting?" Use open questions instead. Use chosen names and pronouns consistently in care plans, handover and conversation. Same-sex partners have the same rights as any other family. Don't express surprise at LGBTQ+ relationships, and never out a resident. Disclosure is their choice. Trans and non-binary residents. Use the name and pronouns the resident gives, regardless of legal documents. Ask about personal care preferences. Many trans people have specific needs around bathing, dressing and body care. Medical history may include hormones or surgeries relevant to care. If you misgender someone, apologize briefly, correct yourself and move on. Religion and belief. Practical accommodation in care. Common observances you will encounter. Christian residents' Sundays as the day of worship, Easter and Christmas. Communion which can be brought to them in the home if they cannot attend church. Muslim residents' 5 daily prayers, salat, at specific times. Ramadan when fasting from dawn to sunset, halal food. Jewish residents Shabbat from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, kosher food. Festivals like Passover, Yom Kippur. Hindu residents usually vegetarian. Festivals like Diwali. Sikh residents the turban, dastar, is religiously required. The kara, steel bracelet. The gutka, prayer book. The tradition of langar-free communal meals for all. What we provide. A quiet space for prayer or worship. Not all homes have a chapel but most can find a quiet room. Visits from clergy or religious leaders we facilitate, often with regular pastoral visits arranged for residents who want them. Special diets per the resident's request, set up through the kitchen and recorded in the care plan. Religious objects respected and not removed: the rosary, the Quran, the prayer mat, the kippah. Calendar awareness: know which dates matter to your residents, and brief at handover when something special is coming up. End-of-life religious considerations. Many faiths have specific requirements at and after death, and not knowing them can cause distress to family at the worst time. Some require burial within 24 hours, Muslim and Jewish traditions in particular. Some require specific care of the body, ritual washing in some traditions, wrapping in particular cloth, gender-specific care of the body. Some require last rites, Catholic anointing of the sick, Orthodox prayers which need timely contact with clergy. Some have specific prohibitions, Jehovah's Witnesses on blood transfusion in life, some traditions on autopsy after death. Document residents' wishes about end-of-life religious practice. While they are well, we honor them in death. You do not need to be an expert on every faith. You need to ask, listen, record, and accommodate. Race, ethnicity, and language. The UK is increasingly diverse and care homes reflect that. Inclusive practice across cultures is part of every shift. What to be aware of. Names matter. Pronunciation: learn how to say each resident's name correctly. Ask if you are unsure. Traditional ordering: many cultures put family name first, given name last. Clarify which is which. Family decision-making varies in some cultures. Decisions are made collectively by the family rather than individually. The eldest son may be the spokesperson. Check with the resident and family how they want to be involved. Some communities have particular care expectations around modesty, gender of carers for personal care, food, prayer. Hair and skin care needs vary. Afro hair has specific care requirements that staff should learn. Some skin types are particularly susceptible to certain conditions. And the history matters. Many older Black, Asian, and minority ethnic residents have experienced racism through their lives, including from healthcare services. Trust may need to be earned. Language access. The right to communicate in your chosen language is part of dignity and access to care. Interpreter services are available through the NHS and through commercial providers the home can arrange. Family interpretation has problems. Confidentiality is breached. Family members may filter information. Conflict between family members may distort what is communicated. Use professional interpreters for important conversations. Care planning, medical decisions, end of life. Translated written information. Care plans, menus, signage where there are residents whose first language is not English. Visual aids and signs help residents whose English has reduced with cognitive impairment. Avoiding microaggressions, the small comments and behaviors that signal exclusion. Where are you really from? Implies the person is not really British. Touching hair without invitation, particularly common with black hair and deeply intrusive. Mispronouncing names repeatedly after being corrected signals that the effort is not worth making. Assuming a person from a minority background is staff, not resident, when they are visiting, the kind of mistake that ages a person 20 years. Comments about food, smell, language, appearance even meant kindly, they single people out. Disability and dignity. Beyond physical access ramps. Types of disability you may encounter in residence. Physical disability, mobility limitations, dexterity issues like Parkinson's or arthritis, chronic pain. Sensory disability, deafness or hearing loss, blindness or low vision. Cognitive or learning disability, either lifelong, often newer terminology in the UK is people with a learning disability, or acquired. Mental illness, chronic conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety. Hidden or invisible disabilities, autism, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, the long-term effects of cancer treatment, chronic pain. Many disabilities are invisible from the outside. Practical inclusion. Communicate at the person's level, sit beside a wheelchair user rather than standing over them. Hearing aids, check they are in, working, batteries fresh. Many residents whose hearing aids have run out of battery are wrongly assumed to have worsening dementia. Visual impairment, announce yourself by name when you arrive. Describe what you are doing and where things are. Do not move things without telling them. Easy read materials for residents with learning disability or cognitive impairment, large print, simple language, pictures. Adapt pace and information to the individual, some need it slower, some need shorter sentences, some need it in writing afterwards. Common errors to avoid. Speaking about a disabled person to their companion. What would she like for lunch? Said over their head to their daughter. Address the resident directly. Raising your voice for someone who is blind, not deaf. Blindness is not deafness. Pushing a wheelchair without asking the person in the wheelchair is the captain of their wheelchair. Do not steer them anywhere without permission. Outdated language, wheelchair bound, should be, wheelchair user. Suffering from, should usually be, has, the disabled. Should be, disabled people, or, people with disabilities, depending on the individual's preference. Treating learning